Ready? Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Robert, and we have a story for you today. And I'm very happy to start out with a song for you. A song about actually reading and singing. And so here it goes. The more we get together, the more we get together, the happier we'll be. 'Cause my friends are your friends and your friends are my friends. The more we get together, the happier we'll be. This verse is the more we sing together. The more we sing together, the more we sing together, the happier we'll be. 'Cause my songs are your songs and your songs are my songs. The more we sing together, the happier we'll be. Now there's one more verse to the song, and we're going to wait until the very end after the story, okay? All right, don't go away. I'm going to reach down for the book that we're going to do, okay? And here it is. This book is called Extra Yarn. Now, we might need to have a little explanation about what extra and maybe even what yarn is, okay? So, extra, if you think about extra, somebody might ask you at the dinner table, we have some extra mashed potatoes, would you like some? Or my grandmother, when I used to go to her house, she'd always say, there's an extra can of Dr. Pepper in the refrigerator, would you like it? Every time I went, she always said the same thing, every time. But that's what extra is all about, okay? Extra this, extra that. We have an extra verse of the song later at the end. And what's yarn? I wonder what yarn is. Well, I brought some yarn in for you to look at, okay? Here's some white yarn. Some red yarn, which I'm sure probably is part of the story today. And your moms may use yarn to knit things, maybe your grandmothers, maybe even your uncle or your brother or somebody likes to knit, okay? And this is what they would use. This is a yarn, this is the red yarn, this is the white yarn. Okay, so here's the story about a little girl and her extra yarn. This is a story written by Mac Barnett, illustrated by John Klassen. Okay? So, on a cold afternoon in a cold little town, where everywhere you looked was either the white of snow or the black of soot from chimneys, Annabelle, there she is. She found a box filled with yarn of every color. You saw two examples of white yarn and red yarn. She had yarn of all different kinds of color. So what's she gonna do with it? So she went home and she knit herself a sweater. And when Annabelle was done, she had some extra yarn in that box. So she knit a sweater for her dog. The dog's name was Mars. So there's Mars with his sweater. But there was still extra yarn. Now she has a buddy named, what's his name? Nate. Here's Nate over here. Now, when Annabelle and Mars went for a walk, Nate, sitting over here, pointed and he laughed. He says, "You two look ridiculous." And Annabelle says, "You're just jealous." "No, I am not," said Nate. And you know what jealous means? That she's saying that he's jealous, like he'd like to be having a sweater like that maybe, okay? So he says, "No, I'm not jealous." But it turned out that he was jealous. And actually, she knit a sweater for him and for his dog. And even after she had made a sweater for Nate and his dog, for herself and for Mars, she still had extra yarn. Does this look like school to you? Yes, it does. And at school, Annabelle's classmates could not stop talking about her sweater. And Mr. Norman, the teacher, yelled, "Quiet! Quiet, everyone! Annabelle, that sweater of yours is a terrible distraction. I cannot teach with everyone turning around to look at you." And she says, "Well, then I'll have to knit one for everyone, so they won't have to turn around." And Mr. Norman, the teacher, says, "Impossible. You can't." Really? What do you think? Oh my gosh. It turned out she could, and she did. Look at everybody in the class. They've got a sweater. Mr. Norman's got a sweater. And then when she was done, you're right, she still had extra yarn. She knit sweaters for her mom and dad. She knit a sweater for Mr. Pendleton, Mrs. Pendleton, and for Dr. Palmer. And she knit one even for little Louie. He's quite a character, little Louie. And he's got a sweater now. She made sweaters for everyone, except there's Mr. Crabtree out here. He's kind of a little weird guy. He never wore sweaters or even long pants. And he would stand in his shorts in the snow up to his knees. "No sweater for me, thanks," said Mr. Crabtree. So she made Mr. Crabtree a hat. And even then, Annabelle still had extra yarn. She made sweaters for all the dogs, all the cats, and for other animals too. Bear, rabbit. Soon people thought, soon Annabelle will run out of yarn. She just has to. I mean, she's just, she's going to run out. But it turned out she didn't. A sweater for the mailbox, a sweater for the house, a sweater for the birdhouse. So Annabelle made sweaters for things that didn't even wear sweaters. Things began to change in that little town. Remember how dark and dreary it looked at the beginning? Just snow and soot, and everything just looked the same color. But things started looking different. Can you see? Oh my gosh, she's been busy. News spread of this remarkable girl because she never ran out of yarn. And people came to visit from around the world to see all the sweaters and to shake Annabelle's hand. One day, the Archduke, who was very fond of clothing, sailed across the sea and demanded to see Annabelle. What do you think he wants? What do you think? I bet he might want that box full of extra yarn. "Little girl," said the Archduke, "I would like to buy that miraculous box of yarn. And I am willing to offer you $1 million. Say it with me. $1 million. "No, thank you," said Annabelle, who was knitting a sweater for a pickup truck. The Archduke's mustache twitched. Kind of a bad guy. But he said, $2 million. Annabelle shook her head. No thanks. $10 million, shouted the Archduke. "Take it or leave it." And Annabelle looked at him and said, leave it. I wouldn't sell the yarn. And she didn't. So, oh look, it's dark. It's nighttime, see? Yep, you can tell by how colorful, how not colorful this is. It's very dark. So it's at nighttime. So that night, the Archduke hired 3 robbers to break into Annabelle's house, and they stole the box. And they took it to the Archduke, who set off across the snow and sailed back over the sea. They're the 3 ladders from the robbers, and they took her box. So the Archduke put on his favorite song on his record player, and he sat in his best chair, and he took out the box, and he lifted the lid, and he looked inside. What do you think he saw? You sure? Nothing. Not one bit of yarn. Just some knitting needles. Well, he was so upset. His mustache quivered, and he shivered, and it shivered, and the Archduke hurled the box out the window and shouted, "Little girl, I curse you with my family's curse. You will never be happy again." What a horrible thing to say. You will never be happy again. So, the story doesn't end. You see, the box landed on a little bit of an ice, a piece of ice in the water. And it started to move in this direction, and it kept going, and it kept going. And look who was over on the other side, looking to pick up the box. And there was Annabelle with her dog. And she picked up the box, and it turned out she was happy again. Look at this. She's done a tree now with branches, and here's the dog sitting. She's sitting up here on the tree. Now I have a question for you. Oh, by the way, that last page, here's a cat, a couple of cats, a dog, and they're all sitting on that beautiful tree that she's done. Why do you think there's always extra yarn in that box for Annabelle? And there wasn't any bit of yarn in the box for the Archduke. Okay? It's a good thing to think about. You know, there are a lot of things that I think I never want to run out of. I always want to have extra hugs, extra peanut butter, even maybe extra yarn to do a little project. She had extra yarn because everything she did with that yarn was to give it to other people. It wasn't all for her. It was just for her to give to other people. The Archduke was going to keep it all for himself. And so that's the good lesson for this story, is give the things that matter to you. Be able to give them and share them with other people. And that's the story, Extra Yarn. And here comes the song at the end, because this part of the song is the more we read together. So here it is. The more we read together, together, the more we read together, the happier we'll be. 'Cause my books are your books, and your books are my books. The more we read together, the happier we'll be. Thanks a lot, guys. See you next time.